Hi, happy Friday. So I decided to set aside some time today to share a story with you in response to all the feedback that I had last week regarding the video I shared about how much feedback I didn't get in industry sometimes because people were afraid to give me feedback. So there was quite a large response to that video, which I thought was interesting, but also warranted a story for me that maybe will help tie in and connect to why some of that was happening and why maybe I wasn't getting feedback. So I've been wrestling with sharing this story though too, because it's personal. It was incredibly impactful, and I've been wrestling with how to share it so that it serves you and also serves the person that was involved. So I've decided to share, the place I was working where this happened, and the details about the leader, including his name. I've written about him a little bit and genuinely admire him, and I think this matters because I think we need to celebrate when we show up with each other in this way. So maybe, I guess this was about 15 years ago, I was working a short stint or a short turn with GM at their powertrain facility in Ohio, and worked for a fella named Russ Bird. So he was a general foreman of maintenance there, and he was my boss. And I was a maintenance supervisor there at the time. And it's a completely different world than auto manufacturing. So obviously I shared it was with General Motors, but it's not like vehicle manufacturing. It was a cast iron and aluminum foundry. So very dark, dirty place, a lot going on, a lot of safety risks, just very somewhat turbulent environment, and a lot of pressure to keep the line going, very loud, but also a very rewarding place to work. So I had never worked in a foundry before, so I had a lot to learn, and was really passionate about learning my skill and my trade and how to lead people effectively. And I really admired Russ's approach with how he led those teams within the maintenance department. And here's what I admired specifically. He had this demeanor about him that was very calm and collected, even when things were a shit show. And in maintenance, as you know, if you've worked in maintenance, maybe you haven't, but in the maintenance world, our responsibilities as maintenance supervisors or technicians is to keep the line running at all costs. So downtime is not good because money is out the door when the equipment's down or the line is down. So, maintenance personnel take that pretty seriously to get things up and running as quickly as possible. And when things would break down in a foundry environment, they were usually pretty major. There wasn't a lot of reset buttons you could push. Usually things had sheared or broken, just crazy. And I watched him lead in a way that I admired. So I always wanted to have his demeanor if I could. I don't know that I did the best job, but I just appreciated how he talked to people and how he motivated people and how he engaged in problem solving and lessons learned after, equipment would break down. I just appreciated it. And I really appreciated, watching these teams respond to that, because these maintenance teams were just insane in that foundry. They were super fast and responsive, so huge kudos to them. So I remember, when I would start my shift, I sometimes would get frustrated with Russ because I didn't feel like I had all the information I needed to make good decisions throughout the shift. I often felt like I was not included in meetings, or, I didn't feel like I was talked to like everyone else was. And I used to get frustrated with Russ a lot, sometimes unfairly, but, I recognize that. But I remember one specific day I was frustrated and you can tell when I'm frustrated when I, let out a large sigh or roll my eyes or just shut down and stop communicating. Well, I was frustrated, and I said to him, you know what? I feel like you don't give me all the information for me to do my job. And I just wish you would talk to me like you talk to, everyone else here. Treat me like one of the guys. Treat me like everyone else. And he stopped me and said, we need to talk. And we sat down and had a conversation, and he said, Sabrina, I do try to treat you like everyone else, but the fact is you aren't like everyone else, and I need to ask something from you. It's okay for you to want to have all the information, and I know you're trying to learn, and it was just a crazy environment. There was a lot to learn. The lingo was different. The language was different. There was a big gap for me to figure out, what I needed. So I did feel a lot of pressure to get up to speed quick. And he recognized that too, but he said, I need to ask something from you. I need you to have a little more empathy and patience with me and the men that are working here. Now, the reality is we've never worked with a woman before, and we don't know what to say. We don't know how to approach you. And sometimes it's a little intimidating because we don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want to offend you. We don't want to be taken up front and fired. So, it's hard for me specifically and other people to know what to do. This is a first time for us. So if there's any way that you can just cut us some slack, me too, that would be appreciated. So after I heard that feedback, I stepped away from that situation thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what was that? And even if you listening to this right now, even if you don't agree with what he said, it doesn't matter if we agree, because at the end of the day, that was his truth and that was his experience. And I knew I needed to believe him because it was brave for him to ask for what he needed. And he was right. I did need to extend a little space and grace to him and some of the other men that were there in that organization, because they didn't know how to work with a female in that space. And, in all fairness, it was really up to me to ask for what I needed. So really setting good boundaries on what was okay and not okay. And I did. I stepped back and started thinking about how I could hold space and grace for him and other people by letting people know, teaching them how to talk to me and give me feedback and how to treat me. It's not okay for me to tap out and just say, nobody wants to give me feedback because, I'm a girl, even though I did feel that way sometimes. And yeah, I recognize people were afraid of me. But I needed to figure out how to get on common ground with people. And that's not always easy. It's not. And sometimes we all have to change a little bit. So I admired what he did that day. That changed me. He stepped into the arena, and it was vulnerable for him. He wasn't sure what he was going to get when he gave me that feedback. But honestly, I needed to hear that. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a change in me. So Again, you may not agree with this, or you may agree, and I absolutely agreed with his feedback because I was able to step into a place of empathy. I didn't know it was empathy at the time, later. And now, even when I work with teams in male-dominated spaces like this, I am able to show up with people in a way that holds a little space and grace when they're not sure, because fear is the real deal, y'all. When we're in fear, sometimes we'll engage in avoidant behavior because we're just not sure. So what he did that day changed how I show up and lead with people, and also changed my ability to extend generous interpretation for people's behaviors. And I still want feedback. I'm always going to want feedback, but I have to acknowledge sometimes that it may feel really scary for people to tell me that. And that doesn't mean we make excuses for bad behavior or for someone treating me inappropriately and make a pass. What it does mean is that we find ways somehow to hold each other accountable and get on common ground, do more of these hard conversations, not less, and really extend some grace. Because he was a great leader and is still a great leader. He's retired now, but still just a great person in general. So never forgot that day. Kudos to Russ Bird for mentoring me and showing me what brave, kind, respectful leadership looks like, because I want to be that. And I'm working hard to be that. So have a great weekend. Hope this was helpful.